Hello, today we're going to look at Hybrid Sons of God, written by Luke Stone. Cover art by Luke Stone, colors by Patrick Gama. If I'm saying his name correctly, it might be Gama because it's just one M, so Gama. That's just the cover, but it says creator, writer, artist Luke Stone, and then there is, on some of these books, there's a layout artist, or there's a, layout and pencils credited to someone else, but the art all looks the same. So I think that person just did layouts and then Luke did all the details. That might be how it went. Here's number 1, and then you got 2, 3, and 4. Luke did a really good job in these books with characterization. So it becomes an ensemble cast, clean up a little bit, of characters, but we'll just get into what is it and what's going on. So we're introduced to our main character. He's called Trash Man. That's his nickname because he actually does work in sanitation. So Luke uses, this is issue 1, and there's a variant cover on it. Looks like this, slightly different style of artwork. The variants here done by Adrian Fernandez. I like them. They're usually a little bit more dynamic than Luke's. Luke's are a little more posed or montage, as you could see here. But Luke's 4th cover, I think, was dynamic, even though it's just a single character. So, anyway, moving on. Getting into issue 1, we're introduced straight away to our Trash Man character, but he's using one of these, I show you something from later in the story, and then we jump back to earlier in the day. Now, what's funny here is Trash Man's being chased by, we don't know who. They refer to him as Clarence. Let's see. And then he gives himself a nickname, Trash Man. That's fine. It turns out because he actually does work for a solid waste pickup, which is usually a municipal thing. WM is on their little badges, and Waste Management is a real company, so I don't know if I don't think that applies here because Luke is in Florida and Waste Management I think is out west. So that but it is a real company. I hope he doesn't get sued or anything. Anyway, while doing his day-to-day job with his coworker, and that coworker is going to come up again for something interesting. But doing his day-to-day job with his coworker, he's visited by a drone that tells him in a minute you're going to need to run. And so his coworker says, "Yeah, you're going to want to go. Why don't you just leave? Because that's just too weird." And then a ship appears. The drone on its little video screen tells some lady, we'll meet her later, tells him to get lost and run. And so he does, and he distracted here, gets hit by a car. And they were having a discussion earlier, him and his coworker, about, why are you so huge? And he's like, I don't know, I'm just this way. So here, they're born that way, yeah. And so there's something going on here. And the nice thing about the story in number 1 is, the issue 1, I mean, is Luke is presenting us with an everyman. Now, an everyman is not a blank slate, like, what was that vampire movie with the chick? Twilight. The Twilight stuff. From what I gathered on that, she was written literally to be empty so that the reader could put oneself into the role. Everymans are slightly different. They have their own personality, they have their own motives and whatnot, but you show them coming from the most common concerns. So he's doing his daily job, he just wants to be left alone, which is pretty normal. And suddenly this thing is thrust upon him. So he starts as an everyman that way. He cares for his dog. He knows he's being pursued by God knows what at this point. He's totally unaware. So he's going to feed his dog, and on his way out of the apartment here, he sees that they're still after him, so he takes his dog with him, which is really cool. This leads up to the events that we saw earlier. And again, he's never had his powers before at this point, so he's just discovering them. And I guess here, as this would be from inside his apartment, the first time he releases his own Kamehameha wave. And then we see him jump out. Now, what's kind of cool about this is, it's not that he knows he has powers, he doesn't, or at least it's presented that he doesn't, but in desperation, he's like, well, weird stuff's going on, apparently I can't be harmed by bullets. Let's just, although his sweatshirt should have holes in it, let's just see what happens and jump out the window. And he even says to his dog later, like, wow, where'd that come from? Dog's in the backpack. So we're led to the events for later that night. These are his pursuers. Again, here he's trying out his Kamehameha wave. I say Kamehameha because that's how the king of Hawaii was taught to me. People who are into Dragon Ball will probably call this the Kamehameha uh, wave. So this is back to the scene from the opening, and he turns to face his pursuers, who call him Clarence. By the way, that's a reference to the Jimmy Stewart movie with the angel, as he, finally shunts them away with his newfound powers that he doesn't really know what to do with. Suddenly, two people appear and appear to be willing to protect him, and that's just where the issue just ends, kind of abruptly. So, who is this? What's going on, etc. Why is it called hybrids? I'm not going to go through all four of these. He is brought in by his little rescuers. Well, although he kind of rescued himself fighting-wise, but he's brought in by his rescuers to join and notice the artwork, I'd say, it varies from being, good and well done to moderate. It's not bad anywhere. That's a good thing. So I kind of wonder where in Luke's progression as an artist did he initially sketch certain things. But the variations I can get over. His faces have a certain style to them, so that's pretty consistent. But what he finds out here from this little group that's rescued him is that essentially he has recessive genes that go back to the book of Genesis in chapter 6, where allegedly either angels came down and then fell, or fallen angels came and mated with women, creating a bloodline of Nephilim. And so that's the background for where everybody's superpowers come from. Is the superpowers are being awakened because the recessive genes are now somehow expressing. Normally recessive genes don't express. Of course, this is the science that ruins all sci-fi, but recessive genes don't express unless you get both recessive genes, one from each parent. But this is sci-fi. Let it go. It's fun. So they're explaining to him a little bit of what he's got going on, and we're meeting the cast of characters at the same time. So with all the different characters, that instead of introducing you to everybody and running you through the whole circuit here, what I will say is Luke Stone is doing a really good job as a writer, I think, by giving us on both sides. So here are your good guys, here are your bad guys. He's giving us, or whatever constitutes bad, we'll find out. But each character has his or her own personality, motives, worries, background, things like that. So I believe, I would assume Luke took a long time to think through each character and say, and do some world building. Like there's probably going to be stuff Luke has thought through. I'm giving him a lot of credit here. A good writer will think through things like, what's her background for stuff that the reader might never ever see, and it appears he's done that. And then the next thing that I saw is, or that I wanted to say is, so this character can be kind of cringy. This guy's kind of a curmudgeon. It's not this is a Christian comic, so it's not overbearing on the faith conversation, even though these two have a couple of faith conversations. It's not cheesy in that way. In fact, in any way that it is cheesy, it's the right kind of cheesy that you have to have for a superhero comic, not the off-putting cheesy that you would have for any kind of Christian, especially evangelical comic, or evangelical anything that tries too hard. He doesn't fail that direction. So the cheese that is present is the good cheese that we want. I like that. This character, for example, can be kind of cringy, but he's written the right way, where he's cringy and annoying, not to the reader can see it, but to the people around him. And if I've got my characters right, I read this like 4 months ago, so I had to flip through real quick and remind myself of what I wanted to say. So anyway, everybody's got their own motives, they've got their own things going on. It really is an ensemble cast where it's presented in a way that you can remember who the characters are. What's really funny is I do like Trashman in the sense of he's also being presented as a little bit of a accidental, aspirational hero. So he wants to do the right thing, but some of that is a selfish motive. He just wants to know what's going on. Now at the top of this page we see it says later that week. There's something that happens in issue 4 that should happen in this scene. Trashman asks, after a whole bunch of other things go on that take up quite a bit of time, he wants to check on his coworker. So he's definitely a compassionate character. It's just, it seems a little out that he would wait that long before saying what happened to my coworker. That's the coworker we saw in issue 1 who was there like right at the beginning of the battle when Trashman's getting chased. It should happen sooner for his character. He's really reserved. He's holding back a lot of Mr. Trashman. He's holding back a lot of what he thinks, and he's trusting people by default, but not too sure of things. And he's also not really acknowledging when, well, she apparently made a costume for him, so now he has a belt and a glove, and his pants are the same color, but, you know, comics, whatever. And he complains, well, I don't have a shirt. And she says, I know. You know, so it's like, dude, get a clue. Later in the book, it seems like he still doesn't quite have the clue. Okay. Anyway, as people come up expressing these superpowers, they're trying to rescue these people because there is a corporation on the other side that is kidnapping them for motives that we discover later. As they're on a mission, and we do find out here what is going on with our bad guys, we get another character. We find out that there is a third faction. So we don't just have our prior good guys and bad guys and their different motives. We now have a third faction involved. I like the ensemble cast. Luke is doing a good job of writing. He's pretty imaginative with taking things that people have put out there and molding them into a whole new story that's all his own. I don't want to give away too much of what's going on here with this lady. She's in the corporation, the bad guys, and her sister is being held prisoner. And yet our good guys don't understand everything that's going on with why this corporation is trying to kidnap people. So they're trying to rescue people from being kidnapped and let them retain their freedom. That's a big part of the plot, and then this third faction comes along. Alright, so there's that on the book. Hybrids here, being based on the existence of the Nephilim, he's doing a really good job of just taking a piece of something that is actually quite controversial for people who care about it. For people who don't care, it's not a controversy at all. And he's using it to launch into something that's sci-fi. Oh, 4 issues so far. Issue 5 is out now. I prefer Indiegogo for getting these crowdfunded books, but because of the current economic situation with all sorts of things shutting down, Luke has been double dipping, where he does a crowdfund on Kickstarter and then a leftover crowdfund on Indiegogo for, you know, afterwards, which is perfectly fine to do. But because things are kind of tough right now, he's going to tighten things up and just do the Kickstarter. Normally, I don't want to back anything on Kickstarter. I have a few exceptions to that. People I've backed before but have narrowed to just Kickstarter. So I will be backing issue 5, and this is a recommended book, obviously. I think Luke is doing a really good job with writing. He's got characterization. There's motive. There's plot. Character plus plot equals story. He's just key on that. So I've got a lot of good things to say about Luke's writing. Okay, when these arrived, Luke had sent. This is just an advert, for Starcross Comics, and that's run by, is it Jim Spicer? Jim or Joe Spicer, I forget which. And so this is a montage of other Starcross characters. There's the guy from Tribulation Task Force. Came with a print that he actually put a thank you note on the back of, which is pretty cool. And he was doing an extra of having trading cards. Sorry, I can't say the word. And the variant covers are actually really good too. So I love trading cards. Above all the things like people sell wristbands and whatnot, not into that. But I like the trading cards. I'm okay with little pinups or whatnot, but I don't really know what to do with them. So trading cards and comics, that's my main thing right there. Books first, and extras would be like trading cards, maybe a bookmark, and then other stuff. So there we go.